Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're going to be talking about Star Trek Insurrection, one of the TNG films. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we're awesome, we're a good time, and we're rapidly coming to the end of potentially our whole show. So you might want to stick around to figure out what we're going to do next. Um, so now, yes, we are talking about the 1998 film Star Trek Insurrection. This would be the third film that featured
Mhm.
the TNG crew. It'd be the ninth Star Trek film overall, and it's the last one that's considered a part of kind of like the golden era of Trek films before we have the colossal flop that was Nemesis. And I'm sure that when we get to Nemesis, we'll talk exactly why it was a flop. But in the interim, we're going to talk about this movie, which was an interesting entry overall into the Star Trek movie franchise. It is one that had a lot of mixed reviews. Even to the point where famed movie critics Siskel and Ebert were split on their decision as to whether or not this was a good movie. So we're going to get into that, of course, who liked what, and of course our own takes on this movie. But before we do any of that, we of course want to do our weekly check-in since we haven't spoken to each other since the last time we were here. I know you guys may not believe that because David and I obviously we enjoy talking to each other at length so much. How could we
Mhm.
stand it to only do it once a week? But for the most part, it's true. Unless something happens, for the
Right.
most part, it's true. Um, so take it away, David. How was your week?
It's interesting. This is Memorial Day weekend, so like all of this week it was dead. And today was a good day. It's on Sunday, which is right the day right before the holiday itself. However, yesterday, I mean, I contemplated calling you, Perry, to complain heavily about something that happened yesterday. The short version is there was a guy, the husband of a young couple, who had come into the store before. His recollection when he called me was it had been like a month and a half since he'd been in. And he thought that the Memorial Day weekend was going to give him, you know, a great deal. And I mean, yes, but a homeboy was way overthinking what he would be getting. No, I'm sorry, I don't know what you thought you were gonna get, but your expectations are way off, bro. So I was on the phone for over 30 minutes with him, trying to make a deal happen, but we weren't quite connecting. I was like, all right, fine. You got to talk to your wife before you make a final decision. Fine. I come to find hours later because an email chain gets started that homeboy started calling around to all my other stores to try and find out if he could get a little something something extra. Yeah, that was that wasn't fun to hear. An email chain, someone coming around and people being like, "Yeah, I get a call from this guy, and he's asking way too specific. Like these questions are way too specific. Like he knows what he's talking about. Like most people when they call, it's generic questions. But anyway, turned into a kerfuffle. Looked like it wasn't going to happen last night, but I called him in the evening and said like, "All right, if we need to make this happen, give me a call." And they called me back today, and we figured it out. But I mean, last night I was fuming about this whole thing. I was gonna call. I wanted to call you. I wanted to talk to my roommate, but he's out of town, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna not gonna bother Perry with this sap story. I'll just tell him tell him today. Tomorrow today. Here we are talking about it. I can give you the full story because until I got that call today, and they were like, all right, let's do it. I thought this was a blown opportunity. I was like, I mean, I was steaming, but now it's all good. It's all done. We figured it out. So,
Okay, maybe we'll get into that after we cover some movie
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, I
Of course,
can.
I remember those though. I mean, of course, everybody wants to say, well, that's what a good, competent consumer would do: shop around, compare your notes and everything else. But there does come a certain point when you are no longer being a smart consumer and you're just annoying and distracting someone from the job that they're required to do. Like at the end of the day, that is someone's paycheck. And it was one of those things that I struggled with also trying to find the balance between appreciating someone who is trying to make their dollar go further versus someone who really just is wasting your time. And I mean, good for
Yeah.
you. You've kind of figured out something that worked in this.
Oh, Perry, I got a whole story. I could go on. I mean, it's not meant for this show,
Yeah,
but
we got a
oh
certain.
gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because the reason I was thinking of talking to you, you might. I'll just briefly tell a quick
yeah,
story. People might
yeah.
be curious. One of the first memories I have of interacting with you before we became friends was of a guy calling a store I was working at, and I was new. This is 10 years
Uh-huh.
ago. You might
Yeah, I
remember this
remember. I
story.
I already know where
Yeah,
you're going with this. That's all you had
yeah.
to say 10 years ago. I already, yeah, that's
Yeah,
like
and
my
this guy
my
had called
nightmare.
you, and you had worked out a deal with him. But I remember he wanted free delivery, and so he called my store. And again, I was green, so this guy calls me up and says, "Hey, I want this, but I want free delivery. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. Let me write that down for you." And then I hear from you, like you said that in email about, "Hey, this guy is my customer," and I immediately was like mad because like that's like I just undercut you. Like I'm new. Like you're a coworker. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. So I had to tell the guy, hey, if you want to talk with Perry, you got to talk with him. He's your guy. I just remember that
Yeah,
this
yeah,
scenario that happened yesterday was like that came to mind. A thing that happened a year ago came to mind. Like I had like a whole slew of memories. And I'm like, I got to
yeah.
deal with this today. You got to be kidding me. But that's a story for another time. I won't give you the full details here right now because I could literally take the whole hour just talking about this one thing. But
Yeah.
there it
I
is.
mean,
There
maybe
it
who knows? Maybe that's what we'll
is.
do. Maybe that's what our show will be like. Terrible work stories,
Yeah.
horror stories from various fields because we've worked in, a bunch of different fields in between all this other stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that we could compare notes and just see, so many things that are similar, but then there's a lot of, those unique, different stories, whatever. I think I would like that as well, but we'll see when we get
Yeah.
there. Well,
What's new
this
with
last
you? What's new with you?
mainly this week, what I have spent my time doing is reading Leviathan Falls, of course,
Mm,
making my way through this. I just started chapter 14.
mm,
I'm enjoying the book. I so far don't enjoy it as much as the last one,
okay.
Tiamat's Wrath. But again, it's still very early on in the story. Like that's the other part of it too that I kind of have to keep reminding myself is that even though I'm on, again, just starting chapter 14 of this book, that there's still, a lot of story to go, and there's a lot of things that are going on in this book that are directly related to what we were seeing in the last book. So, there's a lot of loose ends they have to wrap up with this being the final book in the series. So I'm excited to see that, and it is an easy read. So don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm enjoying it. I'm just kind of ready for it to pick up the pace. So I'm hoping within these next few chapters here we can do that. Um, I have been on this on again, off again quest to watch all of the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, me too.
We
Yep.
we started this, last time I think when was it MI7 was coming out? I feel like maybe I
Mhm.
don't know. Watched the first one, watched the second one. Really lost a lot of steam on the second one.
I know, right? Oh
It
man.
it hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get there so I can watch the other ones. They're all available on Paramount Plus. If anybody wants to do this, you can watch all of them up to movie 7. They're all there. No idea when movie 8 will be coming to Paramount Plus, but again, all the other 7 movies are there. There's also on Paramount Plus a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, featurette stuff, going over the new stunts and things like that they did with Tom Cruise and other cast members and things like that that you can check out. They've kind of built this whole little section of having a Mission Impossible experience. So if you're interested at all, go check it out. I don't know that I will, but I am making my way through the movies, so that is where my focus is. Also, keeping everybody up to date on new Trek stuff. As I said last week, July 17th is the official announced date of season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So, looking forward to that. Again, it's only going to be 10 episodes this season. Not sure if there's going to be any like necessarily to be continued stuff. There seems to be a debate as to whether or not they are going to go with full on serialization so that each episode leads into the next one, or if they're going to go back to kind of the episodic format when doing this show. I think season three is supposed to be kind of a test on that because of the fact that in season two, we did get some episodic events, but then like the last 3 to 4 episodes that directly related to each other. So they don't know if they're going to continue to do that or not. So we'll see. I'm thinking though that based upon what I have read about some of the descriptions they have out there for a few of the episodes in season three, this is going to be completely episodic. Now, whether or not they do kind of a story, B story, where your main A story is episodic, and then you have these little B plots that are dropped in that relate. That could be a way they kind of bridge the gap and get both things done. Who knows? If you kept up with the story at all, you know that there is this threat of a war with the Gorn. So whether or not we see all that play out in this season, who knows? I'm excited for the show's return. I've liked what they've done on Strange New World so far. I am a fan of the show. Ready to see what's next. So there is that. Other than that, it is Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow is officially more Memorial Day. Whether or not I actually do anything, I don't know.
Mm,
But we'll see.
yeah,
I don't have to work, so who knows?
yeah,
Maybe I'll finally, sleep in on a Monday, So there
yeah,
you go. But we're
yeah.
not here to talk about all that.
Oh, I just wanted to quickly say, yeah, I
Yeah,
rewatched the Mission Impossible movies. I had my parents and I watched the fifth one a little over a week ago. So when I rewatched them, I skipped rewatching that one. But yeah, man, number two. I
it's
mean,
brutal. It's brutal.
oh, it's slow. It's got slow mo. Like it's got '90s slow mo. And like Mission Impossible is not meant for slow mo. It's meant for the quick cuts, the great action, going, going, going. Number three is good, but it's still got some slow pits. It's number four where he's climbing on the Burj Khalifa, where like it finally like figured out what it was, and all of them ever since then are great. Number seven, I think, is a bit flawed. You haven't seen it yet. There is a flaw in that it's a two-parter, and that they kind of drag out part one. But other than that, they're great. So get on
Okay.
them, man. You're once you get through three and get to four, you're gonna have a
Okay.
blast. So
Okay.
four, five,
I,
six are all fantastic.
I'll trust you on that.
Yeah,
And we'll probably do some updates here and there once all of those are watched, and then of course going to see the eighth one. Is it out yet officially?
it came out this weekend. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. I don't know if I'll make it through all of them before the movie is out of theaters, but I'm not necessarily in a rush either.
Sure.
So, but yeah, as I said, we're not here to talk about all that. We're here to talk about Star Trek Insurrection. Again, this film came out in 1998. This was directed by Jonathan Frakes, hot off his directing of Star Trek First Contact as well. So they're kind of riding that Frakes gravy train. And as we already know, as we talked about from episodes of Deep Space Nine and various other Trek shows, Voyager, Strange New Worlds, and so forth, Discovery. Jonathan Frakes has kind of been in the director's chair of a lot of Star Trek projects. First Contact was really his first major attempt at the motion picture directing. Then they've kind of just kept him on retainer to come back and direct movies and episodes and so forth. And apparently, all the casts that work with him love when he's the director. Apparently, he's easily understood. He's relatable. He knows how to position them and how to work with them, and makes it a very fun experience. Even the people who are newer to Trek, the actors newer to Trek, say that working with him, he's their hands down favorite director every time that he's on the set. So good to hear. But now let's talk about in relation to this movie. So
Yeah.
I know that you had not seen any of this before, even though you had already finished watching Next Generation. It is entirely possible to watch all of these movies without having to watch anything with Deep Space Nine. They make a couple of references here and there, but they're not detrimental. You don't need to know about Deep Space Nine
Yes.
to watch it or
Yeah.
to get it or whatever. So, with all that said, what did you think of this movie?
Do you want to do a recap, or are we just gonna recap the? How, do a
Okay.
plot
I
recap?
mean, I'll,
I mean,
yeah. You want to do it? Do you want me to do it?
I mean, I can do it. I mean, I think we can do it pretty quickly. It's not actually that. It's It's actually kind of a simple plot, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's not. I was gonna say it's not difficult.
Yeah,
You know,
I'll do it real fast. Yeah, 'cause I just watched it. So Picard is in the crew, except for to come to a planet in this kind of weird nebulous space where it's got a bunch of like gases and such, and there's a planet in the center of it that the Federation is paired with another group called the Sona, and they are watching over a group of some sort of village of people, the Baku people. But Data, as the movie opens, is supposed to be one of these observers that are like cloaked from the Baku people, but he is acting erratically. He's malfunctioning, and he attacks the Federation and Sona observers and reveals their presence to the Baku people. So the Admiral Daughtry, have we seen him before? Is he someone we
Admiral
recognize?
Dougherty, and no, we
Dougherty.
hadn't seen him before, but
He looks vaguely familiar, but
I think the actor might have been in something else Trek related, but I don't think that he
right.
had a like standout role in anything.
Okay.
So
I mean, whatever the case may be, he's great for the role. Admiral Dougherty,
yeah,
uh, he is the one who is working with the Sona to watch the Baku people, but he sends a message to Picard saying, "Hey, we need you to send the specs about Data to us because we need to reset him because he's gone rogue." Instead of just sending the schematics, Picard decides to go and actually send the Enterprise into this system to go help recover Data, and they are able to do so. And on recovering Data and repairing him, they noticed that he was wounded somehow, and that there's something going on with this planet because the Admiral and the Sona want Picard and the crew to leave. They really don't want them to be there. So Picard, being the investigative guy that he is, goes with Data and tries to recreate what happened to Data. Hey, if Picard is gonna try and help save Data, I mean, they were even almost to the point of like we need to terminate Data. Well, he wants to figure out what happened. So he and a group of these Baku people follow Data, and they find a lake where a hidden Federation ship is in the water. This ship is a giant hollow suite. It's a giant hollow deck that has the Baku's village recreated inside. And it's very clear that someone or the Federation and the Sona were intending on putting the Baku people in this ship to send them away from this planet. Because as we slowly come to learn, there's something rejuvenating about this planet. Everyone from Picard to Geordi, for example, Geordi doesn't have his visor, but he's starting to actually see things with his eyes. There's something rejuvenating about this planet. Turns out that the Sona are a technologically advanced species that has partnered with the Federation to harness this metaphysic particles that allow people to rejuvenate in the presence of this planet. It turns out that the Baku are actually several hundreds of years old. They are a technologically advanced species that has intentionally given up technology in order to live a simpler form of life. But the Sona, in an attempt to try and take over this planet, in conjunction with the Federation has approved the Sona doing something to the system that would effectively destroy it, but harness this capability for the Federation's purposes. So the Federation considers moving 600 people, these Baku people, away from the planet using this Federation ship with the holodeck to get them off world so that no one's killed or hurt, and to effectively allow somehow like they kind of edge around the Prime Directive. We move them away, we don't kill them, we don't reveal our presence. But Data has revealed their presence, so that's shot. The Sona are really intent on going forward with this uh, harvesting of this material, and Picard, being the morally upstanding man that he is, confronts the admiral and says, "This is breaking the Prime Directive. This is breaking everything the Federation stands for. I won't stand for it." And initially, he is planning on just single-handedly, like, he takes off his officer's uniform, takes off his pips. He's gonna single-handedly go and help these people try and escape the Sona. But of course, the rest of our crew, from Riker to Troy and Geordi and Data, they all see him what he's doing, and they say they want to help him out. So with Geordi and Riker staying on the Enterprise and the rest of them going down to the planet, uh, Riker takes the Enterprise to the edge of this space. They can communicate with the Federation about what's going on. And the other five go down to the planet to help these people escape the village and go into the mountains and into the caves to get away from the Sona, who have decided that they're going to try and transport everyone off planet by force. They're not going to try and secretly do so. They're just going to round them up and take them away. They do lose some people to some drones in the process. The drones are able to single-handedly, teleport people away by shooting a little like dart thing at them, and Picard and crew are able to destroy some drones. But ultimately, Picard and one of the women, one of the Baku women that he's developed a romantic relationship with, her name being Anish. They get captured along with some others and end up on the ship, the Sona ship. The leader of the Sona is a man named Adar Ruafo, and he insists on moving forward with this process. And when the admiral starts basically responding to Picard's, this is wrong.
His call to his conscience.
Yeah, Ruafo kills the admiral. However, before the admiral is killed, slightly earlier, the admiral did grudgingly give Ruafo permission to try and stop the Enterprise from making its transmission to the Federation. So the Enterprise does get into a battle with two of the ships. They are damaged, and they go into the nebula and they scoop up material, and they destroy one of the other ships and damage one of the others. So there's a dogfight going on out in space. But Picard, because he's now on the Sona ship, he is able to convince one of the other Sona, the second in command, that they need to do something, because it turns out the Sona are actually the children of the Baku. The Baku people, having given up technology and having lived for hundreds of years, they had children, and some of those children wanted to find technology and leave the planet and keep the rejuvenating process for themselves, but they were basically forced out. They were able to, I guess, take the technology that the Baku people had originally developed, once upon a time, and use it for their own purposes. And now they've come back with the desire to try and destroy the system, but harvest this rejuvenating capability. And they are very old themselves. The ones that are the Sona, they are using really heavy cosmetic surgeries, like stretching their skin to like keep themselves from dying. So they're very clearly desperate to have this technology work so they can continue to live. Well, long story short is Picard and some of the others, like Worf, are able to, before the countdown that would shoot off this device goes off, they're able to distract the Sona and get them onto that holodeck ship that we mentioned earlier. But Ruafo realizes what's happening and gets himself transported back onto the ship that actually has the device on it, the ejector. He restarts the ejector, so Picard has to then beam himself aboard to stop the process, and the Enterprise comes back just in time to beam him away, leaving Ruafo to die on the Harvester ship. and everyone goes back to being friendly and good. We restore the Baku people back to the planet, and the living Sona, who were actually the children of the Baku, are reunited with their families. And even though Picard has fallen in love once again, tells Anish that he can't stay. He has to go be captain of the Enterprise because the Federation needs him. And they all leave to go on another mission on another day. So, yeah, that might have
Well,
been a bit kind of sporadic retelling. Forgive me, I didn't plan that. I didn't practice ahead of time, but I feel like that was a pretty good retelling.
what what a guy that Picard.
Yeah,
He's too much man for one woman. The whole Federation needs him.
yeah, yep.
So, but don't worry, he'll be back. He'll stay for almost a year.
Yeah, he has
He's got
318 days he can finally spend on
he's
himself.
finally found a place that he will be willing to take a couple of days off. Yeah, you're beautiful and all, Anish, but the real reason I'm coming back is because your planet will make me younger. So
Yeah.
that's the
Beverly
real
who?
draw.
Beverly what? Dr.
Right,
What's it?
right.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I
there's
Can we start there? Like, for crying out loud, this man, him and Beverly Crusher have been back and forth.
doing this dance
Uh,
for decades, right? We're looking at 30 years
yeah.
of this, or by their standard, because I mean, the show started in '86, it's now '98 when they were doing this film. So what's that? 20 years for them at that point, almost 20
Well,
years.
86 to 98, that'd be 12.
Whatever.
Do your math, Perry.
Anyway, um, too long,
Anyway,
too long.
yes. Yeah, too
It's
long.
30 years by my reckoning because now we're into the Picard era and they're still
Yeah,
not
well,
getting
I
it
mean,
right.
they
But
already
yeah,
had something when the show started. The idea was they already have kind of a history. They've
yeah,
been attracted to each other. I mean, even the Riker Troy relationship gets a
gets
boost.
a breath of fresh air here in this movie.
Yeah, I
Which,
mean,
hey, Riker, Jonathan Frakes directing. How
yeah,
much was this was you being like, you know what needs to happen?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
need me a
Deanna,
bath scene with Deanna Troy.
exactly.
Make it
Yeah,
happen.
you haven't done that thing on my neck in a long time. Yeah,
Uh huh.
I have to say it was funny to see babyface Riker again. He needs the beard.
Yeah, right. He looked. He did. It made him look so much younger. All of a sudden, with that shaved, I was like, man,
Yeah.
yeah, you could do a show now. You're ready. So yeah,
Commander
that's.
Riker wants to command the Enterprise.
So it's like, okay, yeah,
Just
um,
number one need to do a number one. Yeah, he babyface Riker was just the most funny thing. And then the whole like as smooth as an android's behind and Data goes and like feels his face. I'm like,
and
what,
then he's
Data,
like, nah.
you've never seen a man shave before? Like, what are you doing?
No,
Oh my
their
gosh.
relationship had changed. Like the last time that they had, smooth faced Riker, they were all season one new to each other. He grew the beard in season two and had it ever
True.
since. We never saw him fresh
True.
faced again,
Yeah.
so now it's back. And
Oh gosh.
got to see if it still holds up after these intervening years. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, we could definitely start with the whole Beverly and Picard situation, which once again heretofore unresolved, not touched on, lost opportunity, and it's one of those things that just doesn't make sense, especially when it was so heavy-handed when they did it in the initial stages of the show back in the '80s, and then for us to continue and to have no successful resolution
Hmm.
until years later with the Picard show that came out a couple years ago. That's just, and even that was mostly off screen. We don't even really see a big, to do about that.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, I guess they're still trying to show that, Picard's still with it. Picard's still got it. This woman, Anise, is into him and he's into her, and learning about each other and all this other kind of stuff. But it's one of those things that I don't feel like the development of the relationship really made a whole lot of sense. Like, what does Anish have that beyond her physical appearance
Yeah.
would truly be enough to fascinate this individual, um, to the degree that we're supposed to believe that it does in
Right.
this movie? It just doesn't make sense, especially with Picard being an individual who, he obviously feels very passionately, very strongly about certain things, so it makes sense that he would want to be with somebody who was a bit more consistent in his life, not a man who was prone to having flings all across the quadrant as he's, roaming the stars. It doesn't really seem to fit the persona of Jean-Luc Picard.
I
So
agree.
for them to kind of throw that in there in this instance, it doesn't ring true for this character. So I wish they
Yeah.
hadn't done it at all. I wish they'd instead, like, maybe, like, they had done something where, like, Anij was still important because she helps to uncover, like, that the Baku have an advanced technology that they don't use,
Yeah.
but that the real discovery was because Picard and Beverly were suddenly spending more time with each other, and the youthful energies being, revitalized, and them spending this time together, the recognition that there's more here, but also
Right.
something is affecting them.
Yeah.
And through their conversations with Anij and her gentle guidance and tutelage, suddenly it dawns on them that there's something about this planet, and that's why the
Things have
admiral
changed.
and the
Yeah.
sonar are after them and everything else. Now that would have been
Oh.
a bit
Oh.
more of a
Okay.
slow burn of a movie,
Right.
sure, but I think that the story would have resonated with us more, because now the implication is that if this magic that exists on this planet goes away, is this couple that we've had this long-term thing with suddenly going to go away with it, like, with Geordie's eyes? Is that going to be permanent or not? you
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
um, Lots of questions there. So
Right.
but yeah, I just wish they had done it a different way, and really just given Beverly more to do in the movie.
Yeah, she had little to do. I mean, there's the brief scene where she does say, "Oh, look, the people in Med Bay are doing really nicely. They're refreshed and rejuvenated, but the Sona people won't talk to me, and so they're still in quarantine," which is supposed to lead to the Sona leader again, whose name is
Ruffo.
Raffo. Him being like, "Why are you still holding my people?" Um, but the other thing that stood out to me is Gates McFadden as Dr. Crusher. They're on the planet and they have these drone things chasing them. They have to shoot them out of the air. And of course, not only is everyone easily shooting these things out of the air, but she's always had this thing, and it really stood out to me this time, where like she has like a smirk on her face as she's shooting these things down. I don't think she's trying to do it intentionally. It's like she's having a fun time, I guess, which
Yeah,
is kind of crazy because they're in the middle of a pretty intense situation, and she's a doctor.
fine.
She's not
Shooting
like
things can be
Worf.
fun.
Yeah, like
Shooting things
Worf.
can be fun.
Worf and Data are like running around and jumping, and here's Gates McFadden as Doctor Crusher, and she's got this kind of weird smirk on, and she's shooting these things out of the air, no problem. I don't know, just a funny scene, and later
Which
on when go ahead.
I will say that watching this movie, and this is the first time I've rewatched this movie. Um, I can't tell you how long, but in watching this movie after having seen all the stuff that comes in Trek after this, and in particular having seen Picard,
Hmm.
it's interesting to watch it and see how many of, like, their mannerisms and stuff started here and have remained consistent. So, like, and just, mild spoiler, but in Picard, Beverly is very much in, like, commando mode. She's been living on her own. She's been, holding her own and stuff. And the intro scene in Picard is her fighting some people who have boarded her ship. You know, and so she's got, multiple phasers. She's shooting them down. She takes a couple of hits, but keeps on going. She's doing the thing. And then, like, there's another scene later on where she's in control of, the tactical station, and she fires phasers, throws some torpedoes, blows a bunch of stuff up, and everybody's kind of just shocked, and they kind of turn and look at her, and they're like, because like you, they're like, the doctor just like decimated everything? Like, what's going on? And the only explanation we get for that is her going, "Hey, a lot can change in 20 years," and then she just rolls on from there. So it's like there's and then to go and watch this movie, like I said, there's like inklings, like she's a good shot. We didn't know this about her before, but she seems to kind of enjoy it a little bit. So it's just like the things are there that make it eventually consistent for the character development that she was just a person who was incredibly
Mhm.
talented and capable. And when the need arises, she can certainly rise to the occasion and do what needs to be done.
Gotcha.
I just wish that they had used that more and given her more to do. Like I said, her and Picard spending a bit more time together, doing the investigative thing together. You know, Giving us more of a slow build into who the Sona and Baku are to each other, the reason that Admiral Dougherty is so intent on moving these people, and and things like that. This movie also brings back a lot of different things about Next Generation um, that were kind of like winks and nods. Like
Yes.
we get to see Geordi at the helm again for the
Yeah.
first time, which we hadn't seen him do that since season one of Next Generation. The ship being the cloak ship, we know that it's a Federation ship. Federation ships aren't supposed to have cloaking technology. We found out
Oh,
about that through the Treaty of Algernon in the episode "The Pegasus," when that admiral with a then ensign Riker had developed a cloaking device and
right.
damn near destroyed the ship. So we know that's a treaty violation. What else did we see? Oh,
Defiant can use that technology when the
but
or the Romulans allow it. Yeah.
but see, that's the thing. It's not a violation of the treaty
Right.
because it's a Romulan cloaking device. The
Right.
treaty explicitly said that the Federation would not develop cloaking technology on their own.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why, it's and when Data uncovers the ship, it's a Federation ship with a Federation cloaking device, meaning
Right.
we have developed or the Federation has developed cloaking technology. We
Yeah.
also see Data when the movie starts. He shoots out those pillars on the mountain, which display the Federation and the Sona officers where they've been hiding in the mountain range. It was a duck blind mission, which we know about also from a TNG episode where they were conducting a similar duck blind mission, studying those proto Vulcan people who began to worship Picard as a god figure in a TNG episode. So there's another wink and a nod to that coming back. We already talked about baby-faced Riker. A lot of season one,
Yeah.
season two throwbacks here in this movie. So again, I feel like between writers who understand the subject material that they're using to make a movie and a director like Jonathan Frakes, who is also, I mean, intimately aware. He lived it, he worked it. All those things make this movie very much a good movie for fans, but maybe not so much the most accessible movie to people who only have a passing knowledge of Star Trek. You can still
Right.
find things to enjoy about it, but those little details you would miss entirely
Gotcha.
on it. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's fun. It was fun to see some of those references come back up, like Geordi at the helm. As soon as things get get a little intense, he says, "I'll go down to engineering," and then Riker steps up at one point and takes
Mhm.
the helm. But I have to say, the funniest thing about him taking the helm is when at one point he calls up manual control and a
Oh, and the
freaking
joystick
joystick
column,
comes up.
yeah.
I was like, okay.
You're in charge of one of the most advanced ships in Starfleet, and it's controlled by a freaking flight simulator controller.
uh, well,
Mm.
part of the reason I laughed too is because I mean, it was kind of obvious that if Jonathan Frakes, Riker is directing, well, he did this in First Contact too. Like Riker is kind of not doing a whole lot. Oh, he is, but he's kind of low key. It's
Mhm.
always Picard who's doing all the fun, actiony scenes. Riker is on the ship, which is where all the action takes place, but they don't have to spend as much time on those scenes compared to what the rest of the movie's about. And so it was a fun way to give himself a fun role, have something to do, but he's also like not the main action. He's the B plot as the director. So
It was also a
yeah.
very 90s move,
Oh yeah.
90s, especially that block right there of the late night. I'm going to say, again from 95 to 2000, there was a, huge just explosion of gaming consoles and simulators of all types, flight simulators,
Mm.
truck driving simulators, and having those full on console setups with, the steering columns and pedals and, the whole nine. I remember a friend of mine, as a matter of fact, had a flight simulator game that came complete with, joystick. You had the option, you could use the massive joystick similar to what we see in this movie, or you could get that big, what's it, the two pronged steering thing here, and the lever
Oh
pushes in
yeah.
and
Okay.
pulls out and all that, doing all that, and then like I remember watching him play this game, and the initial setup was great, but it was the game was billed as a real time flight simulator. So if you selected to do a flight from, say, Miami to Australia, that's a 19-hour flight.
Hmm.
Guess what? It took you 19 hours to
Oh
do.
yeah.
So
I heard
you're
that those.
you're
Yeah.
sitting at your
Are
computer screen doing the controls and the monitoring and the adjusting for 19 hours. And I was like, why? Why would you do that? I never understood the joy that people had,
right.
that they got out of that. And I mean, I guess that's just a part of my brain that is permanently switched off. It was the same for when they had the truck driver simulator. If you selected to take a over the road route that was, from Maine to California, and it's, a 72-hour stretch or however long that drive is, you were locked in for that time, which to me is decidedly worse than the plane, you know. But yeah, and people just loved it, loved doing it. And I never got it. I never got it. The few simulators I played, it was like, okay, after 15 minutes, I need like an alien ship to start firing missiles at my plane, and I gotta,
Dodge them
power
and yeah.
dodge and, all that. I need something to happen. Otherwise, no, can't do it.
Right.
And I feel like this was just a scene that was, again, kind of all of these technologies are out, all of these things are available. We're just going to start to incorporate some of these things um, into our movie. What better way to show that we're we may be future tech, but we're also kind of with it, and you can control the most advanced ship in the fleet with a giant control stick on a steering column in the middle of our bridge that we've never seen before and we'll
Yeah.
never see again.
Yeah. 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 The way it popped up, give me manual control. Okay.
Like, I could almost see, like, if you're trying to justify a reason for it, like, I could almost see if, like, maybe your main helm control display was completely destroyed, just obliterated, and now you need something that is very basic to
Hmm.
give you just basic steering control of the ship while you conduct an emergency landing or something like that in a remote area where you don't have other ships or support of any kind, and you need to have this last bit of just very basic control to do this thing. This is not a degree of fine tuning, expert piloting. You're not going to get the same finesse from
Hmm.
this thing that you would get from the full on panel and the buttons and the whatever. But if you need to keep the nose up while your ship goes in and give yourself a safer landing to save the maximum amount of people, sure, this will work. So it's one of those things that you can find a justification for it, but even in this scene, it doesn't make any sense. The helm control was not destroyed.
Right.
The maneuver that Riker does with it, um, wasn't any more or less effective had he done it from the actual helm station. And after he performs said maneuver and the other ships blow up and the Enterprise is appropriately damaged itself, he sits down at the helm.
Yeah. it was more just to like have something to do in that scene than it
Yeah,
made sense to have. Yeah. Trying to think what
he
else Riker does. I mean, like,
he's got some great one-liners in the movie, and he
yeah.
also shows. I think this movie's a great one that shows his command style, his command ability. Like for example, when Geordi goes to engineering and they're shooting it out or whatever, and one of the sonar fire that isolytic weapon, which causes the
Oh, the tear.
rip,
Yeah.
you know, and so he and Jordy are over the intercom talking to each other and giving us obviously the background information that we need to understand why this is so significant and so
Hmm.
dangerous. But the way that they're talking to each other, the way they're having this conversation, I really liked how it was needed information. It was given in a respectful manner, but you could definitely tell that these are two officers who knew each other very well and respected each other and um, knew how to get what they needed from the other one. And even to the point where when they finally decide to, okay, the only course of action is to eject the core, and he's like, all right, Jordy, eject the core. And Jordy's like, I just
Guys
did.
did.
And
Yeah.
and Riker just smirks because it's
Yeah.
like he already knew, and he wasn't upset about it.
Right.
Like Jordy would have never done that if he was talking this out with Captain Picard. He never would have made a move without Picard directly telling him to do it. But Riker's style is, I like my officers who we're clearly vibing on the same wavelength here. So
Right.
do the thing. You
Right.
know what's coming, and by you doing it, you've actually brought us more time,
Right.
and it works out in our
Right.
favor as well. So I really did like that scene. And then of course when the
Yeah. It's a
trill go ahead.
Well, I think it's a good point that Riker, like Picard, would not be happy with someone preemptively
Mm-mm.
knowing what he was going to say and then doing it. Riker's okay with it, but Picard would definitely be a little more perturbed
Yeah,
with chain of command being broken.
yeah.
Interesting point. It's also funny to you say that because when Picard comes back to the ship, he and Riker both say command, and or no, someone says something.
The
Cap,
sonar ship was hailing them. It was Worf. And so
right,
the guy says, Captain, the sonar ship is hailing us. And they both said on screen at the same time
right,
because, they were both in command. Technically, they were both in command at that moment.
right.
Captain Picard assumes command authority at the moment he steps back on the bridge. But also, he should, if you
Riker
follow,
hadn't yet.
right, if you follow the protocol all the way out, Riker should have been properly relieved of command
Right,
to resume his normal duties. And he
right,
didn't. So,
right,
you
right.
know,
Well, there's also that funny quip he also made about you're not in uniform when he was leaving the ship in the first place about taking
yeah, no
commands.
uniform, no
Uh,
orders.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Which is
So
that scene was also funny too because you know Picard says to both him and Geordi, "I want you to stay on the ship," and they're both the only two
in
in
the
their
uniforms,
uniforms.
right?
And
That is
like
that's one of the
that
things that
worked
has
out.
always stood out. That's one of the things that's always stood out. It's like they're all seemingly ready to go, but these two officers are clearly still dressed in
Yeah,
uniform. It's like they knew already we were staying behind. We were
yeah,
not going to go with you.
yeah,
Everybody else is. Worf even had time to design himself a X-Men vest, basically, that he's wearing. You came from Deep Space Nine, but you were prepared, man. You
yeah.
were ready. You knew something was going down, so you were dressed for it.
We should quickly
Um,
mention Deep Space Nine because when like I don't even remember why Worf is there. He's on some
they
mission from
they never really explain it. We start to see that he and Picard have a conversation about why Worf is there, but
right.
we don't hear the rest of the conversation. Geordi interrupts over the intercom
Yeah.
and everything
Uh-huh.
else, so we never really hear it. Which, by the way, as a behind the scenes, that is something that Michael Dorn objected to. He felt like there should have been more of an explanation as to why
Oh
Worf
yeah.
was there, rather than it just being he appeared.
Yeah.
He was there,
Yeah.
At
And then
least with first contact, there was a reason that Worf was there,
yes.
and they didn't have that here.
Right. And then when Picard says, we're gonna ask that Worf come with us and we'll drop him off at Deep Space Nine. And then who is he talking to? I think it's the woman. And she's like, isn't Deep Space Nine the other way? Or maybe it was Geordi. It
No,
was
that was
Geordi.
Geordi. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was
And
like, "I'm
Geordi's
gonna
like,
ask Worf to delay his trip back to Deep Space Nine. We're gonna take
copy, yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We're gonna on our way out. We're gonna go to wherever." And Geordi's like, Those are in opposite directions." Are
And
they?
Picard just like winks. Yeah. And of course, it actually kind of makes sense that Worf is helping out because that's when Data is still in his rogue state and they
Yeah.
need him.
And
Of course,
having another
Worf.
experienced officer on hand, it absolutely does make sense. But yeah, they did not do a very good job explaining
How
Worf
he got
being there.
there, yeah. And you're
All,
totally right. No one says we're sorry about your wife dying.
no. Oh, and so there's a behind the scene. There is a behind the scene about that. So this episode, as we had already found out, did was filmed in between It's Only a Paper Moon and Tears of the Prophet, I think it was. So two things for behind the scenes. In those episodes, it's only a paper moon, which we talked about already, and I mentioned that we saw Worf there briefly, but he doesn't really do anything. They had intentionally cut Worf's lines in those episodes because they didn't want to quote unquote overload the actor because all of these things are being filmed on the Paramount CBS set. So he was running from one thing to the next to the next to do all this filming, and they were like, we didn't want to overload him with too much to do while he's also doing
Deep Space Nine.
the movie. He's doing Deep
Ugh,
Space Nine. He's doing the movie. So I can imagine now. I can imagine there were probably a couple of days where like he got up and he put that makeup on and he didn't take it off until like the next day
mm,
because he was in constant filming. Because they were,
mm,
back then they were doing those episodes, and those episodes they already had like 18-hour film days. And so
okay.
then on top of that, he's also doing
Well,
the movie.
we did note that it was the "It's Only a Paper Moon" episode where he didn't appear. So if you're saying they did film it around that time,
Yeah.
well, it's not quite. Someone was overplaying how badly they needed him on Deep Space Nine because they clearly didn't. At least they were able
Yeah.
to make room for him to not need to be there.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah,
so that's the one behind the scenes thing. The other is that when they began filming this movie, and or when they began development of this movie, Jadzia was still very much alive, and there was no indications that she was going to be dead. So when
gotcha.
they had developed the script, there was portions of the script where Picard was supposed to acknowledge that Worf had recently gotten married.
Mm,
And so he was like, there was a couple of lines in there where he tells Worf on one hand, "No, I want you." Like he asks him how his wife is doing, and then the other scene is him being like, "No, I need you to go here because I don't want to have to explain to your new wife why you got hurt on this mission." Like another like a side joke.
ah,
But then by the time they actually got around to filming and all that, things had
those lines had
changed.
to cut.
And
Yeah,
so those lines had to be cut. They felt like it would be a somber reminder of the fate of Jadzia Dax in an otherwise lighthearted PG
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
So I mean that makes sense. Like, but still, you guys were not around for the entirety of Worf's marriage. You weren't there for the engagement. You weren't there at the wedding ceremony, and you weren't there for her death. And now you're just pretending like it didn't happen. I don't like any of you guys right now. When it comes to Worf, I don't like any of you. You're the worst friends this Klingon could ever have.
yeah. True. And that really just brings home the point that I wish this episode or this movie had the Deep Space Nine cast. Like, let me put it this way: this episode
This movie.
feels very much. I'm sorry, this movie very much feels like an episode. It feels like
Hmm.
it. It doesn't have the gravitas of a film. I'm gonna put it directly. It doesn't have like First Contact had some great body horror with the Borg, and there's some
Hmm.
fun body horror with these, Sona, but
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that because
yeah, but it's
it's
so
a lot
much
there.
less than like the body horror of the Borg. Um, and I mean, I just like the whole
The
plot of this film is
I was
that
gonna say the plot is very one note, which is why you keep thinking of it as an episode. It would work definitely as an episode.
yes, yeah,
Um,
this is a two-part episode. It's really what it is, and even
yeah,
that is dragged out. We could have made this a one episode thing almost. Um, yeah, the reason this one feels that way in part is because, or it feels lackluster. Like the whole, like they mentioned it several times that we're in the middle of this war with the Dominion and the Cardassians, and we've been fighting the Borg, and we need allies, and we need new technologies, and so that's why the Federation is kind of cutting quarters in the situation. But all of that is still more interesting than what happens here. I'm just gonna say I'm not a
Yeah.
big fan. This movie is meh for me. I, it was a meh movie, um, and I wish we could have been it like the whole time I've been saying it. Like I love the idea of if they would make a like an admiral on Deep Space Nine of Cisco. Like this is the front edge of the war. I mean, literally, it's on the doorstep of the wormhole. We need a serious commander here, someone with some authority. What would happen if the Enterprise had to run a mission from Deep Space Nine? And we had that wonderful scene at the beginning of Deep Space Nine where Cisco and Picard were like at each other's well, Cisco was at Picard's throat a bit, and Picard became a wall when he realized what was happening. Like we could have
So
had some great scenes there.
you're you're bringing up so many things that you're all excellent points, but there's so many that I wish we had a little bit more time to go into. But one of them in particular is this bad admiral trope that
Oh,
is
that too. Yes.
all over Star Trek. And
Yes.
there is something about these people that when they become admirals, they just lose their minds. Their moral compasses are just
Poof.
taken. They get that final pip and they're like, don't need this anymore, and chuck those morals as far away from them as they possibly can.
Ethics.
Yeah, ethics.
Priming
so
what?
yeah, and that's what we get here with Admiral Doherty, and this is something that, like I said, we see it all the time in Trek, and it's one of those situations where we know that the rank before Admiral is Captain, and so it's like, well, how do these people who were supposed to be these kind of pillars of ethics, of morality, of doing, what's right, even when it's inconvenient, how do they suddenly get to a point where all of that just doesn't matter to them anymore?
Right.
And to that point in this movie, this is the crux of the issue with Siskel and Ebert when they were doing their review as to why this was a good movie or not. So, for Ebert, this argument was enough. Whereas he felt that Picard standing on principle to protect the Baku population made sense. And he liked the fact that we were seeing this very moral officer rising to this kind of action star level
Right.
to protect these people. Siskel, on the other hand, didn't feel that a population of 600 warranted Picard's dedication and loyalty when his loyalty should have been to the greater good of the Federation. The potential of being able to positively affect the lives of countless millions or billions on the grand scale because of what they can get from just this one planet by moving the
Right.
population. Again, not killing them, just moving them to another location. He said was the far greater good that Picard should have been dedicated to and should have helped facilitate versus what he does.
Well, it's so funny that he would say that because obviously he hadn't watched the show because in season
No,
7, that's
he
the
hadn't
whole
watched the show at all.
there's that
Yeah,
whole episode with the Cardassians and the Native
the Native
American
Americans.
Indians
Mhm.
who like we don't want to move off this planet, even if that means we now fall under Cardassian rule. We don't like being moved around. We've been moved around as a culture for hundreds of years. We don't want to do it again. We're gonna stay. Consequences be damned. So yeah, but I have to say the reason that argument also falls flat is because it's very clear in this episode how quickly the effects that this healing, rejuvenating happens. I mean,
Yeah,
clearly, I would imagine the argument is that the Sonar are able to really harness it with this technology. That's what they're offering, and they can bring it away from the planet, so
yeah, instead of
they
having to
can
stay on the planet, you
right,
can enjoy these benefits anywhere.
right.
And
But
it's
the
also
solution,
important to note, though, that they say that the sonar, whatever it is that's affecting them and making them have to do the skin modifications or whatever, they do say it would take them 10 years of exposure to begin to have the benefiting rejuvenative effects.
Right.
Now, we don't know what it is that's affecting them. All we know is at one point they lived on this planet and then they were sent away. And
Right.
sometime during that time of being away, and the guy says they were gone for a century.
Right.
They kicked them off a century ago. So
Right.
in that intervening 100 years, something has happened to them to make them the way that they are.
Right.
And so now they are in desperate need. We see at one point Ruafo is having toxins extracted out of his neck. He's got a cut on his head that, despite
Won't
them
heal.
doing the skin grafts, there's still this cut here that won't heal up at all. So they're affected by something. We don't know
Right.
what it is, but they're affected by
Yeah. Well,
something.
that's the point though. Is like they don't very do a good job of explaining it. Again, the body horror is an interesting idea that you have to keep every day, like stretch your skin out and you have to hold it in place with freaking staples. Like that was kind of a fun body horror scene, a little bit. You know, it's not too graphic. It's gets the point across. Um, but yeah, but my point is like Picard doesn't do a very good job of saying we need to find a compromise solution. He just says this is wrong, and I'm going AWOL.
So
Insurrection is actually it's not insurrection against Picard. It's Picard
leading an
incites an
insurrection. Yeah.
insurrection. Um,
Now I would say it makes sense only because as they're doing their investigation, because Picard does try to bring up a few points, and he's like, we don't really, and a lot of it is we don't really know what's going on here. We don't have enough information. And then the more information that they get, they begin to realize they're working with on a countdown here. They don't
right,
have a whole lot of time. So
right,
suddenly it becomes a we need to keep this planet populated as long as possible so that the proper chain of command can be notified. Because even now Murdar already says, because Picard says, I'm going to take this to the Federation Council. I'm going to lodge protests and everything else against what you're doing here. And Admiral Dowdy says, you can launch whatever protests and whatever that you want, but by the time that you do, oh, this will be done. This will be
yeah,
over. And
right,
so now, Picard, it's like we are going to have this kind of guerrilla campaign, which is not designed to necessarily drive away the sonar, but it's to delay them for as long as possible so that the Federation can properly intervene and investigate what's going on here. And
that's
ultimately,
okay,
that
fair,
is what
that's
he
fair,
gets. He
right,
sends Riker and Geordi back to a point where they can communicate to the Federation and at least get that process started. And he's like, our whole mission here is to stall.
right,
We're not going to beat them. We know we're not going to beat them. We're just trying to stall so that the Federation can come out here and tell Dougherty to kick rocks. Because
right,
unbeknownst to him, Dougherty's dead. He doesn't,
yeah,
so yeah, so he's doing the right thing, but it's just like because of the way the movie is set up and the lack of them giving enough importance to giving us the full explanation, it does kind of, if you're not paying attention to it, it
well,
does
you're
kind of
right.
come off the other way.
Yeah, I would say that that makes sense. I wish they had emphasized it a little bit more to
Hmm.
nail that home, maybe a bit. But anyway, I think in part my why I feel frustrated with kind of how Picard responds in terms of like he didn't directly offer like a compromise. He just went straight to insurrection. Is his whole thing in this episode in this movie kind of keep saying episode. This whole thing in this movie, like he doesn't come off as someone who like has any doubts, any concerns, any like he's I don't know if it's that Patrick Stewart has played the character for so long that he's like forgotten how, or if Frakes forgot to direct him. But like Picard never in this movie, none of them do come off as deeply concerned about failure. Like we might lose, I might have made a bad decision, I might have wasted my efforts here. The whole time it's just go do this, go do that, shoot the drones, put up a force field, put up a thing. Like this
You're
movie
talking
failed to
about
put up
it.
tension.
Yeah, it we don't see what kind of became the signature Picard move, where he is deeply introspective about what to do next,
Right.
where he wrestles with what he internally knows is right versus what Starfleet protocol says is right or would
Right.
allow. We
Yes.
don't see that. From the moment that Picard starts to piece together what happened to Data and therefore what's going on with the Baku and so forth, we see that he is already on their side. It takes it's very little motivation for him to be completely aligned and loyal to them.
Right.
And we're not given any kind of explanation as to, why that is.
Right.
Now, through Picard's reasoning later on, as he rationalizes the next steps that he's going to take, it all seemingly makes sense. Here's this
Right.
minority population that's being displaced. History is replete with examples of people who have been removed forcibly from their land for no other reason than the so-called benefit of a larger population. He is against this. We know already that he's against this because we've seen it in episodes before that he is against this. So this is kind of like he's learned those lessons already. It's a no-brainer that Picard would be against this. But again, for people who don't know that much about Star Trek, it by not having those moments, by not showing the necessary buildup for those things, it makes everything kind of fall flat. And for
Yeah.
those of us who are fans who know it and can remember it and whatever else, it's still a good movie, but it makes it seem like it's missing a beat because those are the things that we look for in every episode. We look for those moments where our
Yes.
very moral Picard gives us this heavy-handed but expertly delivered monologue
Right.
on the morals of the situation. We love
Yeah.
hearing the
Well,
speeches.
he kind of did it with the admiral in his quarters in his ready room, kind of. But again,
Not the
that
same. Not the
yeah, it
same.
didn't have the same
He was
oomph to it.
already yeah, because he was already on the Baku side.
You're
I'm
right.
thinking of episodes like the Drumhead, where he starts off very much in favor of figuring out what is going on there. And then as he's watching the development of the trials and the inquisitions in the Drumhead, he becomes concerned. And we see that scene between him and Worf, where he is like, Worf, like something is not right here. And while talking to Worf, we watch as he pieces it together and figures it out,
Right.
and that's what we're missing. We don't get that here. In this, he's already figured it out. He already knows who's right and who's wrong, and he's already to go all the way to the edge
Right.
with them.
Exactly. And part of the reason I'm emphasizing this though is because the idea that he would one, he was told we want data schematics so we can figure out what's going on. Okay, I'm coming myself. I, Picard, am bringing the Enterprise, the flagship, to this sector of my own volition. Not just sending the schematics. I'm coming here. Hey, Worf, you're coming too. Like by the with the earliest moments in this film, Picard is already AWOL. He's already doing his own thing.
Mhm.
He's already breaking the chain of command. He's already the moral. I'm doing what's right,
You're
what I feel
you're
is I should
you're
do,
absolutely correct.
and it
You're
it just
absolutely correct.
it undermines the. I mean, Picard has always come off as we were talking earlier, like if Riker's the one who like synergizes with the team and they're all on the same wavelength, but Picard doesn't like the chain of command broken. Well, it turns out Homeboy doesn't doesn't
So,
give the admirals quite the same respect. Now, of course, we could
and,
argue that the admirals have lost that
well,
respect.
once again, I'm gonna come to Picard's defense because it has
Okay, yeah,
been
yeah, yeah.
it's been historically established that Starfleet has once you achieve the rank of captain,
Hmm.
you are kind of given carte blanche to do whatever you want
Okay,
when you have your ship and you're deployed to deep space, because in theory you're on missions that your next contact with Starfleet could be years. And so they so
Law
empowered
and
the
Order is
captains
so
is
yeah.
right that the captain now becomes absolute, and you will absolutely have to justify your decisions later on when you come back and we're looking at your mission logs and what you did and whatever
Which is
else.
why you need to do the
But
personal logs to explain
right,
yourself in the moment. Yeah. Okay.
right. But while you're out there and while you're in command, you are pretty much the law of the area that you're in.
And I
So
sorry, keep
when
going, keep going, keep going.
well,
Yeah.
so when Picard hears, we have to remember Picard always has had a special relationship with Data, and he's been from like day one, he's been very protective of Data. So when this admiral that he doesn't know, that he has only really become aware of because of the fact that Data went on this mission with them, suddenly pops up out of nowhere and is like, Data's malfunctioning, send me his schematics. Of course it's going to raise alarms for him. So he delays on sending them. He talks to Geordi about it, and when they can't really think of any reason not to, they do say send the admiral the schematics. But
Right.
then it's later on, as he's doing other things and Picard is clearly thinking about it, he's like, you know what, that just doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to let some random admiral that I don't know terminate my friend. So
Yeah.
we're going to go and figure out what's going on. And he even says, like, I'm
True.
prepared to take Data out if Data is well and truly malfunctioning. But before that happens, I'm not going to let you get your hands on him and hurt him
Right.
when whatever's going on with him, we may be able to explain because we know him better than you do.
Right.
And that's why he goes to the
I'm
Briar
glad I
Patch.
mentioned that then, so you could correct me because you're totally
Yeah.
right. That's exactly how that happened. So yes, Picard did kind of take 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 an action of his own choice, but he did have good reason. And if you're right, if you're telling, yeah, Star Trek captains,
Yeah.
you can do what you want with your ship pretty well, pretty much. That makes sense.
because
Um,
you were so trained and entrusted. And
right,
again, these were deep space missions. Like it's said right there in the, well, it used to be said when if you watch the original series, that space, the final frontier, the monologue the captains give at the beginning.
right,
Captain Kirk would always say it's a 5-year mission.
yes,
5-year deep space mission. So 5 years, and your nearest, you're not going to have Starfleet and support and everybody else right behind you or around the corner. You are out there. You are it.
right,
We are so empowering you to explore strange new worlds and seek out new life. But at the same time, you better protect your ship. You better protect your crew. You better protect yourself.
right,
Like that's kind of how that goes. So do
right.
whatever, barring breaking rule number one, but do whatever. So
Right.
that's how that was always
Okay.
presented.
All right. That's fair. I guess I wish then that they had him do. I don't think they did any personal logs. They didn't open with a
No.
Stardate personal log. They
Well,
didn't
because that's
have.
always that's TV. See, they never do the things like all the things. That was TV enterprise. We're a movie enterprise. There's no reason for the captain to give a captain's log, stardate, blah blah blah. There's no need to do that. They actually did it in First Contact at the very beginning, but that was to establish the fact that this was a new era. We got a new ship. New things are going on, and we need to establish where we are in the timeline. And the star dates given in the captain's logs were always the way that they did that. So
Right.
we get it in First Contact. There's no need to do it here in Insurrection.
Right. By the way, brief aside, talking about personal logs, that episode of Cisco doing a personal log about Garrick setting that bomb up for the Romulan ambassador and then him deleting the personal
Uh
log at
huh.
the end.
Uh huh.
Great episode, man. Ooh, I know why people like it
In
because
the pale moonlight.
yeah, that was a good one.
Great
I
episode.
mean,
Great
Avery
episode.
Brooks is what made that work because he killed it with his how he
Yeah.
played it. But as you were
Well, as we've
talking, I
talked
was just
about,
remembering
as
that.
we talked about Cisco, we've talked about many times Cisco and Avery Brooks. The man just it totally takes the scene. He embodies it. He eats it. He makes sure that you feel him. He puts his stamp on it. When he's in the scene, he makes sure that was an
Right.
Avery Brooks scene, and it's
Yes.
always expertly done.
Yeah.
Um,
Ah,
yeah, it's a
man.
great. That whole episode was great. It's like someone said, "Hey, let's see how great Avery Brooks is." And he said, "Oh, I've been waiting for this," and
I
then he proceeds to just give it to you.
Yeah, just kill it. I wish they had just had like a cameo of him in this movie. Like, hey,
You're right.
Captain, we have Worf here, and we have a mission where we think we could use him. Would you mind letting us borrow your man here for a minute?
We're on our way to the Briar Patch. It's not that far from Deep Space Nine. We want to swing by. We'll pick him up. We're down an officer. We need his expertise. Can
Right.
you spare him? So forth.
Yeah, they could have
Um,
ended with like all of the. I don't know.
they could have had
If
a
they had
an
wanted,
ending since
if they had,
they needed a warp core, right?
yeah.
So maybe they leave the Briar Patch and swing by
Oh,
Deep
that's a good
Space Nine
question.
to
How are
pick
they
up
going to get a warp core? Yeah.
yeah, pick up a warp core from Deep Space Nine. That's the nearest. It was the nearest depot. And so
Yeah.
now we see everybody
They could
having a
have,
drink.
if they wanted to,
Yeah.
brought them into the story. Yeah, it would have been. I mean, the whole idea that the Dominion War is going on, and so like this nebulous system, like there's that kind of one entrance in. Like we need to make this a like the reason the emphasis is on we need to harvest this technology now is because we can't allow this planet to be discovered by the Dominion because they could use it just as effectively against us. So we can't let it fall into their hands, and that means that if we need to destroy the planet to harvest it for ourselves, like that's worth it to us. Um, if
Well,
they go ahead,
Deanna makes a good point at one point in this movie that the infamous "what you're doing to my neck" scene. Her and
yes,
Riker,
I was about to
her,
mention
her
it.
and Riker have been charged with looking into the Sona, and they're going through their history and
Yes,
everything else. And Riker is reading over the things that they've done, and he talks about these other two races they have conquered, and that they have developed these terrible weapons which they've clearly been selling to the Dominion, not to mention the fact that they are developers and suppliers of Ketracel Light to
Catcher
the
so
Dominion.
white,
So it's like,
yeah,
okay, so we're clearly aware of their Dominion ties. Why are we working with these people again? And that's even what Deanna says. Why would
right,
we associate with these people? They're developing dangerous weapons, dangerous drugs. They're selling them to our number one enemy right now. Why are we talking to them? Why are we doing anything with them?
right,
This
right,
doesn't make any sense.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, I wish they could have found a way to bring Deep Space Nine in, just to give it the cameo it deserves.
it really does. It really does. And it's a shame that so many of the Star Trek projects, then and now, really did not embrace what Deep Space Nine was.
Right.
And unfortunately, I feel like the time has passed so much that even now, even if they were to do like a new project and they were to bring in some of the stuff, it wouldn't matter anymore
Yeah.
because all of the officers that would have been there are gone now. Like if they were to do a new show
Hmm.
and someone needed to go to Deep Space Nine, there's no reasonable expectation to see Kira and Ops or
Hmm.
O'Brien or where there's no reason. It's been 30 plus years.
Right.
There's I mean, the station can still be there, sure, but none of the people that we associated with it would be there.
Hmm.
And it's a shame because the show was and is great, and it offered so much and it did so much for the franchise. And it's a shame it never got its due. Now,
Yeah.
there is a little bit of behind the scenes on that too.
Okay. All right.
Armin Shimmerman, of course, who plays Quark, was actually supposed to be in this movie.
Oh,
There,
okay.
they even went so far as to film a scene where he beams down to the Baku planet with a couple of Dabo girls, and he's kind of like inspecting the place as to a potential new vacation spot that he's going to set up and run. Where he runs into Picard, who promptly dismisses him and tells him, basically, over my dead body, that's going to happen, and has Quark and the Dabo girls beam back up to um,
That would have been so bizarre for anyone who didn't know what was happening. I can see why they cut it. Yeah.
and then he was going to charge Worf with, I'm sorry, there was a spider just running across my floor. He was going to charge Worf with returning Quark to Deep Space Nine, to which Worf was going to, basically be like, must I? Like, can't we just leave him somewhere?
Yeah.
But
Got
they,
himself here. He put himself back.
yeah. So apparently they got all the way to filming and costuming, and Quark is in, all of his regalia, and then they ended up ultimately cutting the scene.
Okay.
It's supposedly available on Blu-ray if you buy the movie. There's several outtakes, and there's even an alternative ending to this movie, which were only available on the Blu-ray. And
Oh, what's
um,
the alternate ending?
the alternate ending is where Ruafo, after his battle with Picard, rather than dying, he in the explosion, he manages to make it into what's basically an escape pod. And as the escape pod is blown away from the device, as it blows up and everything, he passes through a series of metaphasic clouds, which causes him to
Ooh.
rapidly regenerate and de-age until he basically dies from the the stresses and everything
Mm.
else.
Yeah, I
So
had to say that sounds better almost because his death in this movie was lame. He just you don't you're okay with not setting the flames or the fumes, and Picard says to him and then shoots it anyway, and then he like dies in a fiery explosion. But it was kind of meh. Actually, the funniest scene with him, we should already mention it. The actor who plays
F. Murray Abraham,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
great actor by the way,
He is. He's most known for playing in
Salieri.
Amadeus Salieri.
He's
Yeah, yeah,
Salieri.
yeah. And he's got a great arrogant kind of way about him. He plays the
Oh yeah.
arrogant asshole well.
He does, and in fact, that's like his signature. He was also in Scarface. He
Mm,
was Scarface's partner before he became Scarface, and
ah,
his whole thing is, I'm the guy in the know here. You need to learn from me, and ultimately, he ends up getting killed in that movie too, very violently, by the way. If I remember correctly, they throw him out of a helicopter. Um, in
really?
Scarface. Then there's the movie Finding Forrester,
Yes, I was
where
gonna say
with
that one's
Sean Connery, and
yeah,
he's the teacher in Finding Forrester who
yeah.
doesn't believe that the
The
student, the
preppy
black
pep
the
school.
black
Yeah,
student who got admission to the prep school is smart enough to have written whatever the essay is that he writes, and
right.
tries to accuse him of cheating to get him kicked out of the school.
Plagiarism.
Um,
Yeah, the
yeah,
plot is that Sean Connery, because anyone should Finding Forrester is a great movie. People should see it.
fantastic movie. You should
Yeah,
absolutely go watch it.
yeah. Sean Connery's
Absolutely.
character is a recluse. He's not left his apartment in like 30 years, but he was a famous author once upon a time. And the the kid whose name I can't remember at the moment, played by Rob Brown, Jamal. That's his name. Yeah, Jamal. He ends up. I forget how he ends up meeting Forrester because he's holed up in his apartment. But anyway,
I
he
think he makes a delivery of some kind
yeah,
and
that sounds right.
runs into him when he's like accepting the delivery.
Right.
Sean Connery's who plays Forrester. I think he's like opening the door or something, and the kid is there
And he
and
like
runs into him.
recognizes who he is, and that's how
Well,
they
not at
meet.
first. He doesn't recognize him at first, but he does later on because he like finds the book that he wrote
Right.
and realizes who he is, and then somehow convinces Sean Connery's character to mentor him, not just tutor him, mentor him.
Oh, I'm reading the plot right now. He decides to sneak into the apartment because his friends dare him. He is surprised by Forrester, leaves his backpack behind. Forrester reads his stuff that he'd written in his backpack and then throws it out to him, having corrected his works, and that's how the relationship starts. Yeah, but yeah, the Solieri or F
F. Murray
Murray
Abraham.
Abraham plays the jerky prep teacher because he turns out that Sean Connery's Forrester character had given permission for Jamal to start off an essay with like a paragraph, and then like you start with my paragraph, and then you take that paragraph and you write your own essay with that first paragraph having started the essay. And so he's like, "Nah, you plagiarized that first paragraph, therefore the whole thing has to be thrown out." And then Sean Connery's Forrester shows up at the end and says, "No, I gave him permission. It's the first time I've left my house in 30 years." Blah 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 blah. But yeah, Sean Connery. One of his last films. I think it's like one of the
Yeah,
last things he ever did. So
it's and when did that come out?
2000.
Finding Forrester?
Yeah, 2000. So I'm looking
Because
at.
we were just sitting here talking about it, and I was like, this reminds me of another movie, and I was trying to think of what the movie was, and we just kept talking and kept talking, and I realized it was another '90s film, The Man Without a Face, starring Mel Gibson, came out in '92, and basically well, it's a similar premise. You have this young boy who wants to get into this prestigious school, but the school has a very intense academic requirement. So the boy
Uh-huh.
basically has like one summer to get it right, and he ends up finding a tutor in the form of this recluse man who lives like on the back end of some spooky property or whatever. And it turns out that he's like half his face is horribly disfigured, and that character is played by Mel Gibson, and I forget what happened to him to make him disfigured, but everybody believes something different about him, like he murdered his children, or he, or wait, it was like murdered his children, murdered his wife, molested his children, was spy, he did criminal, he like all these terrible things that people believed about him that were not true.
Right.
But it's because he is a single man living alone in this reclusive area, doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't interact with anybody, came to the town under mysterious circumstances, so forth and so on. Um, does begin to tutor the boy, and they then uncover that I believe that the ultimate truth to what happened to him was he and his wife had been in a car accident, and his wife had died in the car accident, which left him disfigured, if I remember correctly. But
Okay.
again, same thing. Like the boy, the older man, younger child, mentor, going to school, all that stuff was that movie as well. So, um,
Wow.
but it was a good movie. I thought it was a great movie. From what I can remember, I always thought it was a great movie. I'm gonna have to watch both of these again: Finding Forrester and The Man Without a Face. Um, yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
90s had some uh, great things that came out of there.
Yeah.
Um, what a
That
time
man
for
with the man
movies.
without a face was a Mel Gibson film, by the
Hmm.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, starring. Okay, so I haven't seen that one. So starring and directed by. Okay.
Oh, he directed it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, it came out in '92. David, you were like what? 4?
93. I was 3.
I was gonna say, yeah, you were 4 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go watch it. You'll enjoy it. It's a great movie.
Right.
I'm definitely gonna watch it again. Well, not right now because I've got you know 6 other movies I got to get through, but that's going to be on my list along with Finding Forrester. There's a great scene in Finding Forrester where F. Murray Abraham's character is trying to take Jamal to task with he's saying all these various quotes from different authors, but Jamal knows them all. And so
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, who else you going to quote to me? You not have an original thought yourself. You're accusing me of plagiarism, but everything you're saying, you've stolen from somebody else."
Yeah.
And which very much pisses off the good teacher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of nuance in that movie. If I remember correctly, there's a I think the young girl in the movie, Anna, is played by Anna
Yeah.
Paquin,
Oh, you're
and
right.
her father is like the headmaster or the principal or something,
No, I
and
think her father is the asshole dude, right? Isn't it?
I don't think so. I think that her
No.
father is somebody else in the school though, and
It's clear.
and she's hanging out with Jamal, and of course, black guy, white girl, 90s. No, they weren't gonna have that. Also, he was like on the basketball team. He had some kind of basketball scholarship association, something like that, and they were going to interfere with his ability to play by saying he failed to meet the requirements and all that kind of stuff. So
Gotcha.
um uh, yeah, just a lot of good little 90s tropes and kind of hitting on 90s problems um, in both of those movies, Man Without a Face and Finding Forrester. And this one here with Picard sticking up for the minority group here they're trying to force leader's place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the kid and Data, we didn't talk about that. Those were kind of some fun scenes. Data, do you ever do anything for fun? I've always imagined what it would be like to be a child because everything about me is I don't grow. Kind of interesting scenes. And then Data does do the whole like nose thing bop
mhm,
at to Riker at the very end. So he does know how to do a joke.
he
Um,
learns to joke, he learns to play, he learns to um, appreciate things from the kids' standpoint.
right.
Um, a lot of great, and that's also in and of itself a callback to season one. We were seeing Data look at things from that kind of sense of childlike wonder,
Hmm.
that we hadn't seen from him in quite a while, and so now we get to see him play with this kid and the toys and all that other kind of stuff. Um, What I wanted to really talk about was the fact that this is the first Star Trek movie that was done completely with CGI and various other special effects. There
Hmm.
are no ship models that were built for this or anything like that. All of that was 100% CGI
Oh wow,
designs.
really? Okay.
Yeah. So now they do cheat a little bit because these were based off of things that had been designed before. We see that a lot of like even the ship's interiors and that were redresses of interiors that were used on Deep Space Nine, on Voyager, like Counselor Troy's quarters is actually Captain Janeway's ready room.
Okay.
The sick bay is Voyager's sick bay. Stuff like that. The hall where Picard in the beginning of the movie goes and meets with those new aliens that just got inducted into the Federation and everything like that. It's a redress of one of the cargo bays that was used in Deep Space Nine. So just a lot of stuff like that. But and then the ships were scanned from models that had been used on Voyager as well, and then they just added some certain mods to it to make them look a little bit different. But yeah, all that stuff was
Wow.
100% CGI there.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I read something about on the Wikipedia page about them using more CGI than ever before, but I didn't get to the part where they said the ships were all um,
Yep. Those
even.
shuttles that Picard and Data are flying around in the beginning of the movie, those hero shots of the Enterprise, and then when like the sonar ships kind of come over the back, all of that stuff, all of it was
CGI. Wow.
CGI.
Yeah, I
So
love that moment where Riker says collision course," and Worf. By the way,
yeah,
Worf did have a.
he wouldn't. Yes, he
He
would.
would. Yeah, yeah. I was kind of half and half. Right before that scene happened, Worf was in a kind of a fist fight, and he does take down a few people, but then he does get overpowered. And I was
Because he
like, "This
starts
is
fighting. And I was heavily critical in that scene. I was
yeah,
like, why did you stop? You were winning. You were winning. You threw two of them into a wall so hard the wall exploded. One guy comes in and he hits your hand. That doesn't phase you. You uppercut the crap out of the dude. Another one comes over and you just grab him and you are holding him back while you backhand punch another one. You elbowed and threw this one and you're winning.
yeah,
Why did you stop fighting?
yeah,
Contact the captain when you subdued the group that's beating down the
yeah,
door,
yeah,
not during. And
right,
that's why he lost because he turned his back, and then all of a sudden, they were all on him.
right.
Yeah, I don't think a properly trained Klingon would have made that mistake. They wouldn't have stopped fighting. If that was Kor or Kang or Koloth, they would have been just still hacking, slicing, and dicing. We're not
Right.
worried about Captain Picard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Worf did kind of end the fight. I guess I'm getting at those. Like, I like the fact that he was like doing well, but then like they ended it. So
Well, because I mean, they had to show that Worf could still fight,
yeah,
but they can't let Worf secure the area because then that diminishes the danger to Picard. And we needed a reason for Picard to have to commit to death
right,
in the
true.
scene. And if Worf was always ready to push the button, then there's no actual danger to Picard.
Yeah. In those moments, just have the button not work.
Right. You know, something something
Piker or
else.
Picard, the button doesn't work. We need to save you some other way. Yeah. Um, I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about, but the one other thing I was thinking of while I was watching this is these people that they're saving the oh
Baku.
gosh, they're Baku. Sorry, the Baku. They're technologically advanced, and we find out that they're hundreds of years old, but they don't like weapons.
They don't like technology, period. They have chosen not
Well,
to employ it in their daily lives at all.
yes, but with their main reasoning, I mean, I guess it's not entirely main because they say like it's good to do work with your own hands kind of thing. But one of the main reasons was it always results in weapons that are destructive and such. Again, I just that is a central theme of the three body problem series. So I won't say anything more about it. I just that if you like that kind of plot, like what are the ramifications of that kind of plot line? that's what the three body problem addresses very directly. That's the central kind of theme of that book series. So anyone who would get a chance to read them, you should, because they're very interesting books, and have a very unique take on the sci-fi genre for that reason. So no happy-go-lucky Star Trek episodes in the three body problem. I'll tell you that much.
So this movie had a runtime of an hour and 45 minutes. We've been doing our show for an hour and 35 minutes. So I'm going to say that we're going to use this last 10 minutes to give us the same runtime, because there
Yeah.
are some other things I would love to talk about.
Sure.
And we're just going
Yeah.
to do it. And this is kind of like our Marvel's what if, right? So basically, what if, like, what would we like to see from a movie like this that we feel like would make this movie better? What would we need? I think we both agree that what we need is a heightened level of tension, something that connects us more to the thought process that gets Picard from question to dedicated, questioning to already down to the cause. We want
Right.
more of that. We want to see more of an interaction with him and Beverly, not the new um, flavor of the month in the
Yes.
episode, or in the, yeah, episode in the movie. I think that Anij plays a good part in that she is there in their connection to the Baku and explaining who they are
Right.
and what they're about. But that extra of her having a intimate relationship of any kind with Picard, I feel like was unnecessary, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense at this stage in the game. If this was a movie that had been made during like season one, maybe of Next Generation, then yes. But we're now several years removed from even season seven
Mhm.
of Next Generation. These are
Yeah.
well established characters, personas. They have a beat, a rhythm to them. And to suddenly interject this into it doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't ring true. So if they had instead used her to explain what they can do, but then he uses that to, further solidify a relationship with Beverly, I think this would have
Mhm.
made the movie a bit more touching and poignant for us as fans.
Yeah. While you were talking about Anij, I looked up the actress here, Donna Murphy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, she's lovely. Her part was it was just flat. Like her character is attract. She's a regal type of character, very elegant. Um, but it also meant there wasn't a lot of passion there. So the idea that I mean, I like the idea that Picard would be with an elegant woman. So I don't think she was the wrong choice in terms of like temperament per se. It was just
No,
like it was just
I
like
think this. I don't think that she was the wrong choice either. Like I said, if this
yeah,
had been something that had been introduced earlier in like the show run,
right,
it would
exactly.
have made more sense then. But because of who Picard is and we've seen him become over the years, even with her being an otherwise alluring woman, I
Yes,
don't think that she would have had the same draw as someone who is consistently with him time and time again, the
right.
way that Beverly is. And he clearly
Yes,
has an intimate relationship of some kind with Beverly.
right.
She's helping him get dressed and she's fixing his collar. They're telling jokes to each other a little bit. She makes fun of him when they find out he's got to have a dance with the regent, and
Mhm.
oh, can she mambo, because apparently Picard can mambo. We didn't know that, but why does Beverly know that? There must have been a time where she saw
Yeah.
him doing some mambo,
Well,
or
when he
maybe she
goes to
did it
his,
with him.
you mentioned that he goes to his ready room at one point and says, "Turn on some
Yeah,
music." And
and
what do you
he's
want, Mamba?
yeah, which means
Yeah.
that she
Um.
influenced him. He's feeling good. He's feeling the energetic vibes from the planet. He goes to his quarters to change his uniform because he just went swimming, you know. And what's the first thing he does? He doesn't call up weird Baku music. No, he calls up the mambo that Beverly had been talking about. So I mean, like, there's stuff there that they could have definitely worked with to make this um, a better movie for the crew and for us as viewers. I
Gotcha.
As a what if, I would have loved more of a play in on the Dominion and what was going on there,
Yes.
because the
Yeah.
Dominion War is not over. The
Right.
Dominion War is not over.
Yep.
And having a bit more of a heightened, that could have added some tension, some danger. We're going into the Briar Patch. This is a known area that the Dominion traffics. They don't have any bases in the area, but it's a heavily trafficked area. And because of the weird effect that the briar patch has on ships, you're not warp capable in the briar patch. Your sensors lose a lot of functionality in the briar patch. So we have the sonar as an unknown element, but we also have the Dominion, a known very lethal threat that could be lurking in the other side of the nebula.
Right.
Don't see anything with it.
Yeah. Yeah. They could have done. They could have brought in so many Deep Space Nine references as opposed to just Easter eggs.
Yeah.
That alone just brings up so much. And I guess I've already said my piece there, so I'll just. By the way, I just want to say Donna Murphy. The one thing people might recognize her from, if you have kids, she played the voice of Mother Gothel in Tangled. So if you remember Mother Gothel in Tangled, that was Donna Murphy. Who?
Didn't see it.
Oh, you haven't seen that one? Okay.
No.
Well, anyway, um, and the one thing she did in the movie that was supposed to be unique to her was she could like slow time somehow.
Yeah.
There are these
They,
moments like two. Well,
we
there was.
didn't talk about that, and I'm surprised because as much as you love your time travel,
Oh,
time distortion stuff, I thought for sure you would have wanted more of that.
well, that it was more of a gimmick that she could slow time, but like she didn't explain it. She actually refuses to explain it to Picard. She's like, "You ask too many questions. Just go with the flow, basically." But then later on, he basically is able to do it. She's been hit with a rock and she's been wounded, and he basically says, "Don't leave me." He's just met her like 24 hours ago, and he's already gonna hold hands with her and everything, and they're in love and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I mean,
The power of perception and
yeah,
Picard's innate discipline makes him
exactly.
have this ability, which again is an ability that we never see again. Is
Right,
it special to being on this planet in the Briar Patch, or is this something that they can do? Again, we don't get any explanation because Anise refuses to talk about her people to any significant detail. So we don't know if this is an ability they've always had or that they learned that they could do once they got to the new planet. So.
right,
But I mean, it would make sense that it was something that was tied to the planet since Picard is obviously not one of their people, and yet he's able to do it. So it must have to do with the planet. Um, what else did we see here? I agree that I feel like Deep Space Nine they should have done a Deep Space Nine movie, and they should have done by now a movie where at least a mixture of crews should have occurred. We
right.
should have seen Picard having to work with Janeway and Tuvok and Kira and Esri and O'Brien again, and we should have seen
Well,
a
it's another
couple of
connection they
these
could have made.
movies.
Yeah,
Huh?
there's another connection they could have made. Not just Worf, but O'Brien. Hey,
Yeah,
O'Brien's back.
yeah.
Yeah,
Worf and O'Brien together it would have made sense,
yeah,
um but yeah, they just a lot of missed bits here. But that's part of my little what if. I think that's what I would love to see is before anybody just flat kicks it. I would love it if they were to one more time do a movie, a big movie, where Picard and Cisco and Janeway have to team up. They have to figure out a way to work together. They reunite what crews they can. I get it that not everybody can really feasibly come back and it work in the plot of the movie, because you only got so many working parts and so much time to tell a story or whatever. But I feel like, man, there's just that should have happened by now.
right,
And from my understanding of it, a lot of that is there's like a lot of franchise gatekeeping that for some reason, way back in the 90s, it was like you were on this show and this show only. It was a really big deal for Michael Dorn to go from Next Gen to Deep Space Nine. It was not oh, we want to bring more forward. No, that wasn't it. It was a lot of negotiating to get that to happen, and not something that they ever really wanted to do again. The hassle of looking at it. So yeah, at this point though, I really feel like, man, yeah, it's a gold mine of an opportunity. People would love to see Picard and Janeway have to argue out their points. If you
Right.
know anything about those two characters in particular, um, yeah, I mean, the argument would be that alone would be enough of a movie. Those
Yeah.
two justifying why they're doing or not doing whatever
Yeah.
the situation calls for.
Yeah. Do whatever you got to do to get these characters together so we can have some interaction.
And
Yeah.
it's been and the weird thing is it's been done. Like people have written enough. There's books, there's comic books, there's graphic novels, there's fan fiction, of course, because there's fan fiction for everything, where all of those things happen, where these people have to, work together and justify and whatever else. And some of them are really, really good, really compelling. I know there was a comic book where Q basically took the various crews and mixed them up and they had to compete against each other for different things. So, but you had people like Cisco was working with, I think it was Tuvok, and Janeway had Data and some other, like so just a weird mix and match. It wasn't just all of TNG against all of Deep Space Nine or anything like that. They
Right.
were all intermingled, and watching their personalities play out, even for a comic book, was really quite entertaining. So the magic's there, guys. You just gotta cast your spell and reel us in. So.
Right.
Well, we've actually gone over the time, but that's okay. Anything else that's on your mind in our little what if timeline here?
Nah. I think we've. I mean, you always do a what if. I feel we've hit on them. My biggest problem with this episode, or with keep saying episode, this movie is it feels like an episode. It didn't have the grandiosity I would want from a
Hmm.
film.
Hmm.
It was fine as like an episode. If it truly was an episode, it could have been fun.
Hmm.
The special effects, obviously, the budget is what makes this a movie, not a TV episode.
Hmm.
But yeah, oh well.
Okay. Well, that is definitely going to do it for us on this episode. Hour and 47, maybe 48
Boom.
minutes here, but we did it. I hope you enjoyed this extra long movie breakdown of Star Trek Insurrection. If you have not seen the movie, again, it's a pretty solid one, so go ahead and watch it. This movie and all of the movies and all of the shows, except for Prodigy, of course, are available on Paramount Plus. So go and check them out and let us know what you think of them. If you agreed with anything that we said, or didn't, again, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Also, just to wrap it up, just remember July 17th, the official release of the first episode of season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So be prepared. Other than that, guys, we'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.